Good morning, class. This is your favorite professor from Kentucky. I hope you're all doing very well. I finished grading your papers yesterday sometime. Today is Saturday, so I graded them. I think I was done by mid-afternoon. Most of you did very well. I think the average on the paper was an 85, which is very good for a class like this. Please understand, some of you are very concerned, I think, because this material is so hard. Well, let me just reassure you, it's very hard. Philosophy in general is a hard topic. And then when you start talking about philosophy of religion, it gets even more difficult. Um, and believe it or not, this is one of the best books out there as far as giving you the basics in this whole discipline. One can look at other textbooks. I think I told you all I looked at one. I didn't really get into it much, but it was $85 and it just came out. And I didn't want you all to have to spend that much money for a book that I wasn't really sure about. This is a foregone, this is the classic book, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It is hard, okay? So when you're sitting there reading a paragraph and then rereading the paragraph and rereading the paragraph, I just want to tell you that's normal. Now, this is not like a class like biology where you can memorize stuff or um, English or any of those things. Oh, hang on a second. My phone's just gone off. Hang on. Sorry about that. I've got my phone on. My wife's gone. So anyway, so just understand it's difficult. And I could tell by some of your papers that you weren't real sure about the classical arguments, cosmological, teleological, and ontological. Some of you nailed it perfectly. But don't get discouraged. I'm pretty lenient with grades when it's all said and done. Probably much more so than maybe others who have taught this course in the classroom or even as a hybrid. I know it's difficult doing this long distance, if you will, but just hang in there, continue with the readings. I will try to give you my thoughts about each chapter. I received one comment about somebody wishes that my lectures were longer so that I would cover more of the material. These are intentionally fairly short, 15-20 minutes at the most, for a couple of reasons. The main reason is if I had to watch a talking head for 15 or 20 minutes, I would be bored out of my mind. Second thing is, what I'm trying to do is help you understand the basic concepts. So as you read the chapter, it begins to make some sense to you. Okay? I'm not here to lecture over every point. Now, there are, believe it or not, some online instructors who have PowerPoints, lengthy PowerPoints, 2 hours long for every single chapter or every single topic. And maybe I should do that, but I've been teaching online for about 15 years now, and I've never found that to be something that students enjoy or like. Now, at the end of this coming week, after you have a discussion board forum coming up, what I'd like for you to do is answer the question on the discussion board fully, as best as you can, and then also to get full credit, if you answered it fully, you must also respond to one of your fellow students' postings as well. And that must be a full response too. You can't just say, well, I agree, or I agree with Mary, or I disagree with Mary. I mean, I need some level of depth there. So you have to post an answer, and then you also have to respond to one of your fellow students, okay? And this is worth 50 points. Try to give me at least 2 or 3 very good paragraphs. It doesn't have to be like a paper length, but just give me 2 or 3 really solid paragraphs about what it means to talk about God, and then also at least 1 paragraph in response, okay? Some of you also mentioned that the requirement for the paper, this last paper, was 1 to 2 pages. And yes, I did say that, and yes, I did comment on some of your alls that, I thought it was a little bit short. I guess what I expect from, maybe I should just change it, but what I expect from college students is if I say 1 to 2 pages, at a minimum it'll be 2 pages. Many of you had 7, 8, 9 pages, and you gave a fuller, more rich answer, and you scored better. I don't like to do rubrics where you say, if you do this, 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 then you get a certain grade. And the reason I don't like to do rubrics is because you end up writing to the rubric rather than writing about the topic. And I know that's a big thing in education. A lot of, especially people who teach education, think that you should have a rubric for everything. My thought is it's the same problem we have in public schools, though. They write to something rather than about something, and that bothers me. I want you to write about what you about the topic, not follow some menu that says, okay, if I write about this, then I get so many points or whatever. Don't be concerned if you didn't do well. Like I said, the average was 85. That's very, very good for a class like this. At the rate everyone is going with the quizzes and all that, and I'm suspecting with the forums, discussion boards, everyone will do just fine. Okay, so don't worry about it. Don't get stressed out. But at the end of this session, this coming week, there is a midterm survey that I would like for you to fill out. It's just 3 questions. You can let out your frustrations at that point. These are 3 questions that will tell you about, or ask you, what's going well in the course, what could change in the course, what would make it better, those kinds of things. Feel free. I mean, this is your course. You're paying for it. And, if you think, I'm a terrible teacher, write that down. I mean, I'm not going to take offense at this stuff. If you think, I'm sure most of you will say something about the book being too hard. And I get that, but they're all hard. This is the easiest one, believe it or not. A lot of you will say things like, I don't talk enough, I talk too much, whatever it is. What this will help me do is, they've asked me to teach it again at the end of this course. When this ends, I guess there's another session, another 10-week term, and they've asked me to teach it again. So I want to make sure that I try to do better for the next class as well. Well, that's enough about all that stuff. We're going to look at Chapter 7, and I'm briefly going to talk about Chapter 7 because Chapter 7 is kind of a strange chapter, in my opinion, and the topic is talking about God. And only philosophers, I think, could come up with something like this, a topic like this. And the basic premise is this: how do we talk about God? If God is without body, if God is not like man, if God is formless, if God is all-powerful, how can we talk about God being wise? In other words, how can we talk about God being kind? In other words, how can we talk about God attributing to Him human characteristics when in fact He's not human? That's the basic argument. It's like, this is a terrible example, but I think it'll help you understand what I'm talking about. Let's say you see a wolf out in the wilderness, and you say, oh, that's a kind wolf. Well, you're attributing to that animal a human characteristic. A wolf is a wolf. It doesn't matter. I mean, what is a kind wolf? One that doesn't eat you? I don't know. So the argument for philosophers is, how do we talk about God? Can we truly apply to Him human characteristics? And as you read through, there are a number of different arguments. And I'm going to pull my book out here, so if I look away, that's what I'm looking at. There's a number of ways you can look at this. One of them that I thought was kind of interesting was on page 143, causation and talk about God. The fact that God caused things to be means that we can talk about God, which to me is a little bizarre, but it is interesting. The fact that God causes the world means that God can be spoken about in terms of the world. In other words, if we say Steve is a bad teacher, we could say God is a bad teacher, because God caused who we are and what we are and all the things in nature. Um, Metaphor and talk about God on the next page, 144. Again, metaphor and analogy, trying to relate things that are close to God that are not God. It's kind of like saying the night sky is as dark as a cave. So you're trying to use an analogy or a metaphor to describe something and give something a certain amount of meaning. Now, here's where I come down on this, okay? And as you read through this, you'll find all kinds of arguments. The most strange one, I think, is the one about negation being negative. Let me see if I can find this. This is on page, page 145, God and negation. If you talk about God, of what God is not, then somehow you can apply talking about God. Let me tell you the way I understand this, okay? Clearly the Bible, and I believe the Quran, teaches very clearly that God is spirit. We have incidences in certainly the Bible where it seems as though God, for example, walked with Adam in the Garden of Eden. God at one point told Moses to hide so he would not see his face. There was the burning bush in which God spoke but was not seen. There's a description of God in the book of Daniel that talks about a long beard, an older man with a long beard. But again, that's an analogy. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what God looks like, but that was put in terms of this. Well, here's the way I look at it, okay? And this may be wrong, this may be right, I don't know. But here's how I look at it. I believe we can attribute human characteristics to God, but on a greater term, on a greater spectrum. For example, let me say that one of your classmates is Charlie. Charlie, if I said to you, you are a very wise lady, then I'm making a statement about you. On the spectrum of wiseness, though, the far end would be God is wise. That means that though you have human wisdom, God's wisdom is far greater. Let's see. If I say, Joe, you are a kind person, then you're kind here. When we say God is kind, God is way out here. So it's a spectrum of kindness. So when we talk about God, there's nothing wrong with attributing to him human characteristics. It's just on a different scale. It's just on a different end of the spectrum. What was interesting is the chapter didn't even really talk about that. And I don't know why, because to me that is how we speak about God. We cannot speak about God in terms other than the terms given to us through the language. So why this big argument about how to speak about God is, and that's why I said this is an interesting chapter, which I think is a very strange chapter, because it makes sense to me, and I think most Christians, most Jews, and most Muslims would agree that we speak about God or Allah in terms that we understand. But these terms don't stop at the terms limited by people. Again, it's the other end of the spectrum. So if I say, Sarah, you are a very smart person. You're smart in human terms. But if I say God is smart, God is on the other end of the spectrum in smartness. So yes, we are applying human terms to what we believe to be a spiritual God. But my question is, why not? Why can't we do that? If God asks us to have some type of relationship with Him, then the only way we can convey our thoughts to Him is through language that we know, or that and that God knows back. So if I can conceive of a God that is wise, then that simply means to me that He is on the utmost end of the spectrum of wiseness. The word wise doesn't stop at wise. For example, my middle son, he didn't go to college, but he's very good with his hands. He can build anything. He can take anything apart. As a matter of fact, he just remodeled his kitchen. He's very wise when it comes to using tools and building things. My daughter, who's a sophomore at U of L, is very wise when it comes to textbooks. She's learning to be a teacher, and she does very well in school. So she's very wise. Those two words, wise, have different senses of meaning for both people. One is in reference to his abilities to do certain kinds of work. The other one is in relation to terms, again, that a person can do in her work, which is school. So why is it wrong for us to talk about a wise God when in fact we use these words differently even in our own world today? So that's where I come down on this topic. As you read through this, I guess my question or my word of advice to you is simply try to understand the basics of what they're trying to say. And really what Davies is trying to say is, how do we talk about God in human terms? And there's a lot of different ways people think of that. Again, only philosophers would think like this. We who consider ourselves fairly normal perhaps would not think of God in these kinds of ways. Because when I talk about God, I certainly apply human terms because I know no other terms that I can apply to Him. If I say God is all-powerful, to me, that means He's on the end of the spectrum of all-powerful. If I say Steve is all-powerful, then I'm limited by human terms. What does that mean? Well, maybe it means I can read a book, an entire book in 5 minutes. Oh, he's all-powerful. He can do that. Or I can do great magic tricks. I don't know. It can be anything. But the term that's applied to a human can be applied to God, but yet on a wider spectrum. That's my understanding. That is not in this chapter, but that's where I land on this. So you might want to remember that for the next quiz that we have or the next paper that's due, or in your forum discussion itself. I'm asking you to talk about how you talk about God. Okay? All right. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.